we're not exactly going to be doing a reading, nor will this be a flip through of the entire deck, although we will be pulling cards, and I'll just be rambling a bit about them. And again, while this isn't a reading, if you do come into this video with any sort of intention and the sequence of cards that I happen to pull resonates for you, or gives you any sort of insight, reveals anything for you specifically into your situation, you can, of course, use that. I will meet you right there with that energy and dedicate those cards to you. But more than anything, I imagine that this will be a little bit educational for those of you who don't know anything about tarot. I'll just be pulling the cards and talking about their meanings and my associations for them. This is the Anima Mundi deck. It's an animal-based deck, and it has a lot of moons in it. To me, it feels very Piscean. So if you're a Pisces, you might vibe with this deck. I am a Pisces rising, so I really enjoy the presentation of this deck, and I think it's very, very beautiful. And this is the deck that I most like to use whenever I'm doing readings for other people. In my opinion, animal-based decks like this allow me to have a little bit more of an intuitive feel for the cards than human-based decks. I also really like decks that are a little bit more pippy. A pippy deck is one where, say, in the suit of cups, the 5 of cups is just kind of 5 floating cups rather than an illustration. Usually, for me, the more complicated the artwork, the more I end up just focusing on the artwork, and I kind of lose my intuitive sense of the thing. Whereas with abstract decks, where I'm really just getting immersed in the style, or where I'm seeing an animal instead of a fleshed out human, I sort of can ride that vibe a little bit more easily, ride that wave. Shuffler, as you can see. We had one fall out. Yes. We have the King of Swords. The King of Swords is a bird sitting on a branch with the sword above him. He looks very cold. The King of Swords is a very quick thinking. My cat just jumped on my bed with me. Might hear some cat noises. The King of Swords is very quick thinking and very cold, blunt. He has a sharp wit. He passes judgment very, very carefully, but not always very tactfully. The King of Swords might not always have the best mediary skills, social skills. He's not a warm, kind figure, but he is a just figure. And he thinks and considers everything. I would say he is a plotter, but he is not a schemer. And by that I mean I don't think he has very much ill intent. Although sometimes his actions may be harsh in service of the greater good. Very utilitarian, usually, and very cold. This card feels very cold. Let's see what this top card is. We have the Magician. The Magician corresponds with Mercury, so if you know that any of your placements, astrologically speaking, are in Mercury, that can be important to understanding what the Magician means to you, or how the Magician... My cat's grooming herself, I'm sorry. She's making some groomy licky noises. But yes, if you know your placements in Mercury, that can impact your understanding of what the Magician means for you. The Magician is card number 1 in the Major Arcana. It's a very powerful manifester. Magician, manifester, Mercury, magic, marvel, majestic. The Magician is also a card of balance and being able to call upon each of the 4 elements to reach their goals in order to manifest what they want to manifest. The Magician is not just a hard worker, but a very smart worker and a very fast worker. Honestly, less of a worker, more of a magician. Instead of being a card about effort to put in, they are a card about being resourceful and creative and being able to divine their own success. I love that this card has the moth as a magician. It's another M. And those big moth eyes. It would have been so easy to have the owl as a magician, an owl who's wise and quiet, but a moth is so perfectly contrasting to that, in that a moth isn't necessarily wise, but they know how to look it. They're not necessarily quiet. They flutter and they're speedy and they're quick, but they are still enthusiastic and they have a lot of soul and spirit and fire energy to them. That kind of quick, warm, resourceful, energetic, creative life and light. But not aggressive. Just energetic, magical. Let's see what we have. What do you think it will be? I think it will be the world. Let's see if I'm right. I'm wrong. It would have been pretty incredible if I was right. We have the Three of Swords. The Three of Swords is painful. The Three of Swords is a card of a very painful heartbreak. The kind that kind of rips into you and you feel it all the way through your bones, through your core. The kind of heartbreak that rips you open, shakes up the world. It doesn't always have to do with love. The sharpness of a death of God moment can also be a Three of Swords moment. I would not say that the dark night of the soul would be Three of Swords. The dark night of the soul would be too quiet and too empty. But that moment of trauma, the death of God, or perhaps within some philosophical frameworks, birth itself, that moment where you come out of some comfy, non-life, pre-life space into the bright, loud, blaring world, and all you can do is cry because everything that was good is gone. Kind of a Three of Swords moment. But most commonly it's a more conventional sort of heartbreak that has something to do with a relationship, something to do with a pain that hurts more than it should. Maybe because you ignored it for too long until it hits you in the face and you can't ignore it anymore and it feels so much worse because of how long you've resisted that pain and it hits you all at once. Or maybe it hurts you because someone lied to you, someone betrayed you. Very sad card. But sometimes it's through those reckoning moments that we can learn to grow most, you know? Trauma is a great teacher. I'm gonna guess that this one is either the moon or the high priestess. Nope, wrong again. Maybe by the end of this video I'll get one right, but I'm not gonna hold my breath for it. We have the Five of Swords. This is kind of another painful one. The Pentacles and the Tarot, especially by contemporary tarot practitioners. I feel like Pentacles get a bad rap because some people reduce them to materialism, kind of. In my opinion, that's a very shallow view of the Pentacles. Pentacles are like my favorite suit. I really like the Pentacles. But in my opinion, the swords are so painful. I don't think they're at all lesser, but at least within my own self, it feels like the swords are the most painful of the suits. Very sharp and pointy. But the Five of Swords isn't exactly an ouchy moment in the same way that the Three of Swords is. The Five of Swords is kind of obsession and control and manipulation. It's sort of almost like a mini devil card. But while the devil is a sort of mastermind or an all-powerful force like addiction, the Five of Swords is more like a immature need to control all of the things around you, an inability to deal with not being in control of whatever the situation is. It can manifest as jealousy a lot, or a false sense of ownership, insecurity. I feel like this is a cup, maybe 3 of Cups or 8 of Cups. Nope, still wrong. We have the 9 of Wands. The 9 of Wands is a cup. Oh gosh, no, card. The 9 of Wands is a card of fortification. A lot of times this can be setting boundaries or preparing for some sort of storm. Sometimes the Nine of Wands can be a warning in a reading, like you best prepare for this thing. But sometimes the card can also be letting you know that you may be working too hard to keep things out that might serve you if you let them in. Like if you were to get the Nine of Wands in a love reading, it might be telling you, suggesting to you that it might be time to open up, to let down some of those walls because you, or maybe them, are feeling very guarded unnecessarily. But usually for me personally, I like to think of it as a card of protection, a card that is giving me the message to protect something, even if I am tempted to let it go. It's a card that reminds me that what is sacred and deserves to be protected. Let's just do one more. We have the Four of Swords. The Four of Swords is a card of rest, rejuvenation. It's a break. It's time to take a nap on your journey. It's an interlude. Every big hero's journey usually has, I'm gonna say the wrong terms, but there's usually a sort of trial for the hero where he either sees the death of his master, or the death of a good friend, the death of a brother, or a near-death experience himself. And he conquers his first foe around the same time. That realization of mortality from either almost dying at the hands of a foe or a force, or one of his close comrades dying. And then after that, they usually go back home or go back into some sort of learning space with a darker sense of the world. And they use that time to rest and train and learn and grow before they ultimately go out on another journey. And that second journey is the journey that defines them and makes them a hero. What's coming to mind for me right now is the Epic of Gilgamesh. I believe the creature that he kills is Humbaba. They're a sort of guardian of the celestial, godly realm. Or you could say they're a guardian of the underworld, like Cerberus, or kind of like they're guarding they're not a sphinx, but a good parallel would be the cherubim that guards the Garden of Eden, who is thought to be a foe, and Gilgamesh defeats them, but not before he witnesses the death of Enkidu at the hands of Humbaba. Enkidu is his brother, sort of. That's a whole other complicated thing. Kind of his brother. But also his twin. Well, I guess twins are brothers, but they're not the traditional kind of twin. Cosmic twins. And that sends Gilgamesh into a deep sadness, but he returns back to his city and mourns for a long time, but recharges and gains the courage and vitality to go on another quest to find immortality. And that's the big one that we usually hear about, Gilgamesh on his quest for immortality. That's the one that ultimately defines him. But that rest and recharge period, very Four of Swords. On this card, it's a sleeping bird. And what a lovely card to end this video on. I hope that you rest and recharge.